Those type of people with all the letters after their names that have a moral smugness, sanctimonious, self-righteousness. And they don't care about people. They really don't. And that's what's so strange about Trump. The only thing I get back on the messaging, if they can get the right messaging and point that out, that environmentalism is an elite attack on the middle classes.
Hello, ladies. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. Victor is the Martin and Ely Anderson Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution and the Wayne and Marsha Buskey Distinguished Fellow in History at Hillsdale College, and he's just about everything. He's a military historian, classic philologist, best-selling author, syndicated columnist, and a man with the website The Blade of Perseus, which you will find at victorhanson.com, which you should subscribe to. I'll tell you why later in this episode. Why you should. I'm Jack Fowler. I get the pleasure and honor of asking Victor questions twice a week. So does the great Sammy Wink. Today's episode being recorded on, what day is it? Sunday the 6th. And this particular episode will be up on Thursday, July 10th. And we're going to begin the show talking about getting Victor's take on Trump-ugees. And we'll define it and discuss it when we come back from these important messages. We are back with the Victor Davis Hanson Show. Victor, first I have to make a correction. We recorded another podcast earlier, and I wrote a note. I forgot to bring it up at the end. Thomas Aquinas, you so kindly were referring to Thomas Aquinas College, and said St. Thomas Aquinas. And there is a St. Thomas Aquinas College, but it's not that Thomas Aquinas College. So yes. I love Thomas Aquinas College. God bless him, and we just want to be certain we're not telling people to go to a different institution. Now, that said, Victor, there's a headline in the Daily Mail. Huge spike in quote-unquote Trump-ugees fleeing America, but they'll quickly regret it. So, Victor, these are people who just got to get out of this terrible country. They're actually getting rid of murderers. ICE is getting rid of murderers and rapists, and it's unsafe to be in this country that's being made safer. And we'll go to maybe the Netherlands. And not only just read this.
I would be careful about going to the Netherlands. Yeah, they have a... Yeah. Where are they going to go? Because Trumpism is not unique to the United States or any particular state. It's a representation of the failure of the post-war progressive project and how it hijacked liberal democratic parties and turned them into socialist, Marxist, racially obsessed parties. What you see in Hungary or what you see in Romania or what you see in Italy and what you see growing in Britain, it's a revolt against the elites who destroyed the border. They had bankrupt ideas, so they imported people from other countries that were impoverished, that would need larger state efforts, higher taxes, bigger government. They dismantled their defense. They couldn't deal with homelessness because they can't be judgmental, and they were elite. If you say you're going to get rid of Donald Trump, Kurt Wilders is the most popular guy in the Netherlands, and so people are not going to be receptive because you're saying, I'm going to go to a enlightened country that's not like Trump, and they're going to say, we're trying to be like Trump. Get the blank out, probably. And here in the United States, I mean, the verdict is out, but whatever your political allegiances are, if you look just empirically in the last, say, 17, 18, 20 days, look what he's done. I mean, we're not at war with Iran, and the thing that sword of Damocles over our head they're not going to have a nuclear weapon for years. And there's no wide-scale World War III. There is none. And China is in desperate economic shape. And Xi reportedly is not in such great health. And everything the Wall Street Journal told us in March was not true. We didn't have a recession. We didn't have a market collapse. The stock market's the highest it has ever been. And there was good job growth. This is despite AI and all of these larger megatrends. There was good job growth, better than expected. The economy is sound. There's more personal income and savings. There's some, anxieties about it, but we still haven't seen the effect of a lot of these tax cuts. We haven't seen the effect of $8 to $10 trillion, and we'll see if they deliver on promised foreign investment. People said that tariff, including me, wasn't going to be a big revenue earner, but it seems like it is. It could be. I did say that people will do anything to stay in the American market, and they were making such huge profits that they're willing to keep their prices low and make less profits, but still be profitable. Donald Trump has a club, and he's beating these people, but if anybody's been in the university, what they got away with is outrageous. And I think everybody understands you don't want this ESG commissariat and Wall Street. You don't want DEI. The Green New Deal is just ludicrous. So everything is in flux, and I think people are just, they don't know what to say about it. If we come out the other end, if Trump is successful, you'll see it easier to buy a house. You'll see it easier to go to college. You'll probably see less emphasis on race. You'll see a stronger military. You'll see a greater deterrence abroad. And that's not going to be a bad thing. And then he will leave in 3.5 years, and people will not give him credit for what he did, and they will hate his guts. And they'll say he was a horrible orange man. And then a bunch of left-wing lunatic professors will do their annual ratings of presidencies, and they'll say Joe Biden was 32 and Trump was 47, you know what I mean? By then, 49th. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. Everybody knows it's going to happen. As I keep saying, he's going to be Ethan Edwards, and he's going to be at the end of the searchers, and he's going to walk out that door, and he's going to hand Natalie Wood back to all the people who couldn't find her and couldn't do anything about it and mouthed off and said he used unorthodox mechanisms, and what was his background, and was he really, did he ride with Contrell or somebody? And then he's going to open the gate and walk out, holding an arm where he's apparently kind of wounded or something.
Yeah.
So that, and the same thing with Shane. He's going to ride off.
No,
but he's not going to get credit for any of it. So if you people hate him, he will be your benefactor, and you will not like him.
Yeah.
Partly because Shane, he was your benefactor.
In Shane, where they were mocking him early on the movie, right?
I love that. Yeah, that dance. Yeah. I don't know about the rest of you, but I want to know how you know Wilson.
Yeah.
It's like. So the subtext of that is, I'm terrified of Wilson. He's going to kill us all. But how dare you think that you might have associated in any group that might be in the same? And please go kill him, but don't do it in my name. And then leave.
Let us turn around. Yeah, hey, Victor, one thing on the economy that's worrisome, though, I forget where I saw this the other day, but I know it was Jeffrey Tucker, who's writing in the Epoch Times, or the Epoch Times. There were 400,000 manufacturing and, I think high-end trade jobs that are unfilled, and I don't see how they get filled quickly given the culture still in our education system, including our high school system. Like, the preference is to go to college and take 8 years and become a sociologist and leave with a mortgage payment and have no skills, as opposed to directing kids towards well-paying and quite necessary jobs. Good luck getting a plumber.
There's all these mythologies about the employment that we don't have pragmatic, common sense economists that try to explain the inexplicable. I'll give you some examples. So there was a number of news stories this week that Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon are not hiring, Jack. They're not hiring. And there is no job market now for a technical writer, for example, because of AI. And this trend will continue. And then there was another article that Amazon is in the process 50 or 60% mechanizing, and they showed these videos of, in their warehouses where these little strange robots take pallets. So on the one hand, you're getting this message that there's going to be fewer and fewer jobs, not just on the professional side, but people working in a warehouse and things like that. They're going to be automated with AI robotics. Okay, so there's going to be less need for labor. And then you're told, we're starting to see again and again that of the 12 million people that are coming in, a lot of them were not working. So it wasn't like we needed all these people to come in and do all these jobs. And then we have a 62% labor participation rate. So I don't know whether because of mechanization, robotics, AI, there's going to be fewer jobs, or people are willing to work and they're not working, or it's going to be hard to find a job. We're going to expel all the illegal aliens, and then, as the Democrats say, as Nancy Pelosi, nobody's going to pick our crops, or
wipe
that
our
other
heinies.
Congresswoman said quite pornographically, nobody's going to wipe our black. It was horrible. Anyway, it's very hard to figure out what is what. All I can say is somebody who lives on a farm and watches mechanization and drives to work through the great San Joaquin Valley's west side, I cannot believe the level of mechanization. When I look at olives or things that I thought could never be mechanized, olives or raisins, not just almonds or walnuts or pistachios. And agriculture.
You ever see these incredible machines that have lasers that somehow or other sense the weeds and just go over them and like tap, 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 tap? They're just it's remarkable.
I went and looked at a local, I mentioned it, Fowler Pack, and they've got the most sophisticated machinery that when you have the mandarin oranges, the cuties come down, these computer eyes can tell every imperfection. So, right. And they can direct things. When I was in college, that's what every day, I was the guy in many packing houses that took the packed out box and palletized it, then gave a fresh box to women. There would be 30 of them, trying to pick out the culls on the revolving belt. That's all over with. And so it's a very unsettled time that there's all of these theories and ideas that are antithetical to each other. They're not compatible. We need more workers. We need more workers. How did you close the border? We're going to need more workers. No, we don't need more workers. We have a crisis that AI and robotics is going to put us all out of work. And I think the answer is that we need things that AI and robotics have not yet done. And those are plumbers, electricians, asphalt pavers, all those people. And there is a social taboo for that. And I think that's a good thing that's ending, because the compensation on our supply and demand economy is such that those people are making a lot of money. You call up somebody to put a roof on or to do brickwork or to rewire, but you can't get anybody. And when you do, it's just astronomical, $30, $40, $50 an hour cash. Sometimes they'll insist on. So everything is in flux right now. And I think that's why people are uncertain. It's not Trump. It's just that they don't know what's going on in the world. And
well, they do know that the elitists have had it wrong. They know that.
They do know that the post-war progressive project, everything they told us was a lie. Everything they told us was a lie. The laptop was a lie. Russian collusion. We're learning just recently now, John Radcliffe is releasing from the CIA that Comey, Brennan, and to a lesser extent Clapper just basically dreamed up the whole Russian collusion and took that bogus dossier and put it in the presidential daily briefing of intelligence, even though they knew it was unsubstantiated. I think a lot of people just feel that nobody's ever going to be held accountable. Not those people, not Fauci, none of them. Not Peter Strzok, not Lisa Page. None of these people are going to be held accountable.
Yeah. Well, like the commies who ran East Germany and Romania, Romania, Ceausescu he got it, but the rest of these SOBs got away with it.
So it's a time of flux, and we don't have disinterested, qualified arbiters of what's going on. So many people in the university. I mean, if you'd picked up the Wall Street Journal and you read it every day in March and April, you would have believed that Donald Trump had destroyed the U.S. economy. That it was dead, that we were going to be in a trade war, we were going to be in a stock collapse, it was just the budget, everything was going to be terrible. That was pretty much the news division.
Yeah.
And that didn't turn out to be true.
Victor, mentioning before the deportations, now that the big, beautiful bill has passed, Tom Homan has said that the deportations, which I think if we look at the numbers, I thought, like Doge, we thought there was going to be more. Deportations, we thought there was going to be a lot more already, but he says they are going to skyrocket. Why? Let's see. Speaking
more
to
agents. More agents.
Yeah.
They're not going to have much to do on the border. The wall's going to be completed. That's going to pull people off the border into the interior. They already had 1.5 million people who have been adjudicated. They already have got their deportation orders. It's not controversial. They've got 500,000 people. They're making progress. And then they have this self-deportation that the experts told us would never work. You get $1,000, you get a free trip back to wherever you came from, and you get to apply, and you're not banned from re-entering legally. But if you wait it out to the bitter end and you get deported, you're not going to be able to come back legally, at least for a long time. More important, they're going to get a lot more resources. The only thing I hope that I don't wish, because I'm not as capable as the people advising Trump, but they need to strategize how to deflect. And I don't mean deflect in the sense of, we're so worried what they say. I mean like neuter the criticism so that the public understands and appreciates what they're doing. And by that, I mean take illegal immigration. We forget that the 12 million that Biden let in, that was on top of what a lot of studies said were 20 million, right? And out of that 20 million, there were estimates. That was what Obama's dreamers. There were a large number of people who have now been here, 10 years since Trump went down the escalator. So some of these people have been in the United States 10, 20 years undocumented, number one. I know many people that surprise me in my community will tell me that they're illegal. I cannot believe it. They speak perfect English. They've got jobs, they've never committed a crime, and they're not on public assistance. It seems to me not to reward them, but if Trump said, we're going to get all 12 million that just came out, we're going to get all the criminals out, we're going to get all the people who have deportation orders out, we're going to encourage self-deportation, we're going to get all the people who have broken laws out, we're talking about DUI and all, we're going to get all the people who are able-bodied, who are on public assistance. We're going to get all the people who just arrived. I think we got about 30 million people here illegally. I think the statistics, if you examine and break it down, would support that number, given what Biden did. Then if Trump said, while he was going to do all that, he said, you know what? If a guy's here for more than 5 years, take an arbitrary number, no criminal arrest, fully employed, and he wants to stay here, he's not going to get a citizenship from me. He's going to get no amnesty, but he can apply for a green card if he pays a fine, $1,000, $2,000, I don't know. And I think that would that would make the left look really bad, because what would they do? They'd say, well, he's rounding up people. And he's saying, no, I'm only rounding up people who just jumped over the border, or they're conning the social welfare system, and a lot of things Trump does, people don't think it through. Like when you start deporting people, you don't just get rid of 500,000 people that commit crimes. And as a lot of people pointed out, John Lott and others, there is a correlation between deporting hundreds of thousands of criminals and a drop in crime. And that has financial benefits for the economy, as does removing people who are sending part of the $63 billion in remittances, not just to Mexico, but another $60 billion to Central America. And people are talking about it might be $500 billion all over the world. When you remove those people, there's all sorts of these insidious advantages that accrue from that economically. And if he were to do that, I don't think the left could. I think it would really hurt them before the midterms. They'd say, wow, he's not... I have to defend people who either just came in under Biden and swarmed the border. I got to defend people who are not working and they're conning the system. I got to defend people who are criminals. And then these other people are getting a chance. And so I think you don't want to reward people who broke the law, but you can make them pay a fine and you can get them into the system. And that would help them as well. And then the same thing on energy. He's doing such a great job with oil and natural gas and nuclear. And he can really make that case and say, we're not going to take valuable farmland and we're not going to take valuable shorefront property and put these ugly windmills out in the ocean or along the beach, and we're not going to do it on mountain passes. We're not going to take Manning Avenue near me. We're not going to put on thousands of acres of farmland out of production for these solar, when we're going to do clean, small nuclear plants, decentralized. He can really talk about the environmental effects of environmentalism. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's what we're going to get to that a little later in today's episode, Victor, because there is an emerging, developing, however you want to call it, conservative, because of Trump, or Trumpian, if you want to call it that, environmental policy. I think if you look back 15, 20 years ago, someone said, what's conservatives' environmental policy? It probably would have been, we're against the left, insanity with Delta Smelt or things like that. So it would have been antagonistic. But he's developing. Well, let's take our break, and we'll get to that when we come back from these important messages. Hey, folks! Big news! All Family Pharmacy just launched its biggest 4th of July sale ever, and it's one you don't want to miss. Now through July 13th, it's buy one, get one free on the meds everyone's been asking for: ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and mebendazole. Order 90 capsules, they'll send you 90 more, completely free. And yes, the doctor's prescription is included as well. You don't need insurance or extra steps. This is the kind of freedom and convenience most pharmacies stopped offering a long time ago. But not all Family Pharmacy. They're keeping it simple, affordable, and available to everyone. So if you've been meaning to stock up, now's the time. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Victor. Again, that's allfamilypharmacy.com/Victor. We're back with the Victor Davis Hanson Show, recording on Sunday the 6th. This episode is up on Thursday the 10th. Victor's website, The Blade of Perseus. Go there, victorhanson.com. Subscribe, $6.50 a month, $65 discounted a year. And when you subscribe, you'll be able to read the twice-weekly articles Victor writes exclusive for the website and his exclusive video. There's plenty more there. The Blade of Perseus, victorhanson.com. Victor, here's a headline from Just the News, the mothership of this podcast. Trump leans into conservation, signs Make America Beautiful Again executive order. The story begins, President Donald Trump signed a Make America Beautiful Again executive order establishing a commission tasked with conservation of natural resources, protecting wildlife, and expanding access to public lands. The order, which the president signed on Thursday, so that would have been a little, probably a week ago from when this podcast is up, is aimed at outlining a conservative environmental policy for the administration that includes reducing bureaucratic restrictions on the enjoyment of public lands and preserving treasures like America's national parks for the next generation. Boy, Victor, I am sure in California, where they love to exclude people from public lands, natural lands, that's going to go over like a lead balloon. But
no, they don't.
I like this. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it reminds me of when I was growing up, Pat Brown. He was Jerry Brown's dad. He was governor. And the whole idea was, we're going to make all these beautiful lakes in the Sierra. We're going to have reservoirs. They're going to stop flooding. They're going to provide irrigation. They're going to have recreation. They're going to create clean hydroelectric power. And they're beautiful places. I was just at one today at Huntington Lake. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world that Henry Huntington, envisioned that would power all of the electric trolleys in Los Angeles, and it did for a number of years. But it didn't ruin the natural beauty, and that's what they're saying. And when you get down to it, when you think about the radical environmentalists, they don't want anybody going anywhere. They want to have exclusive access to wilderness areas and as their self-appointed custodians. But they have to look at environmentalism in a new moral matrix. And the new moral matrix is, if I pass environmental, who gets hurt and what type of people get hurt? So if I'm in the California Air Resources Board and I say I'm going to go down the particulate matter almost to nothing, who has to pay for that? We just had a California gas tax going into effect, a new one. I think it was already $1.50. It's going to go up to 65 cents. We're going to get up to $8 a gallon because the refineries are leaving. We lost 2 big refineries. Who gets hurt by that? Not Gavin Newsom, not Nancy Pelosi, not Barbara Boxer, not any of these people. It's going to be poor people. But they never think environmentalism. They always talk, we're for the poor. We're worried about. No, you're not. You've made prices almost impossible to buy a house. Now Gavin Newsom is actually. So many people have said this, Jack, that the freeways are starting to look normal here in California. You go down 41 in Fresno, there's no homeless, there's no cavemen anymore. They were burrowing into the side of the hill above the freeways. Yeah, people living in underground, kind of subterranean, and that's cleaned up. There's no trash. I see the graffiti is less common. He's getting ready for a presidential run, and he's forced through the legislature a relaxation of coastal commission and resources boards to the extent they can't build houses. They have things in California no one would believe. You have to use certain types of building materials that don't impact the environment, certain drywall, certain shingle, all this stuff. A lot of developers I know, they film every house, and when it's being built, they film it because they're afraid they're going to be sued by the government or the homeowner. And so they can show, this is what we did, here's the materials, here's the labor, here's how it was built. And it's very important to really call these environmentalists out. They don't care about people. They don't like people. And you can really see it where I just went to Huntington Lake. We had the Aspen Fire, I think, 4 years ago, and we had these ancient leases by these wonderful people who were custodians of the forest, modest little 100-year-old cabins. 80 or 90 of them burned down. Did the government come in and said, we're going to give you the lease and we want you to rebuild? No. They almost encouraged people not to rebuild. About half of them didn't. And then they went and said, you're going to restore that to the pristine conditions of 1912, take up the slab. And they charged them $60,000 or $70,000. They had to get environmental experts come in. But those people were great for the forest because every time you would go on these little back roads around the lake, you'd see people picking up garbage, or They would clean the floor. They were wonderful custodians. So this idea that people are somehow antithetical to the wilderness, that's not true at all.
But they weren't people who were going to the French Laundry. They were kind of Victor Davis Hanson type people.
They want people who have enough. They want a person with two types of characteristics. They have to have enough money that they can have their ideology implemented on us, the lab rats, with no effect on themselves because of their money or zip code. And then they have to, because a lot of them are secularists, they have to believe that their credentials, I'm a state biologist, I did my forestry work at Berkeley, or I'm working on the impact of large particulate matter in underserved communities, I did my environmental studies degree at Stanford. Those type of people with all the letters after their names that have a moral smugness, sanctimonious self-righteousness. And they don't care about people. They really don't. And that's what's so strange about Trump. The only thing, I get back on the messaging, if they can get the right messaging and point that out, that environmentalism is an elite attack on the middle classes. It's by people who are not subject to the consequences of if he can just drill that in. And when he does things like executive orders, he can just say, listen, I want to know what the rules are. I didn't create the rules. Barack Obama's the one that said phone and pen, executive orders. You guys are the ones that did with Joe Biden. I'm just following. I'm not out for revenge. You were the people who went after Fox News and made them pay multi-billion, not me going after CBS. You started it. I just want to know what the rules are because all I'm doing is following precedent. I'm not doing anything new. I'm just following and I'm not doing a lot what you do. I don't want to go into Jill Biden's underwear grow. I do not want Kash Patel to get a SWAT team and go into Hunter Biden's house. I'm not going to do that. That's what you people do. And that's what he needs to do. And I think he needs to get that message across that he is not MAGA extremist. He's just following the precedents that he inherited. And he wants to know what the rules are because they created them.
Their extremism. So I've mentioned before this website Unwon, and there was a piece there the other day. They cover all that damn DAM stuff going on out Washington State, California. Yeah. But there was one dam, and I forget the name of it, and frankly, I forget the name of the congressman, Democrat congressman. But this lie that's been out there that we have to knock this dam down because it's going to go down because of an earthquake. I think that one was on
the Snake River. Yeah, it was crumbling, remember?
It was a California one, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Was that on the Klamath? I don't know. They said it was crumbling, it was terrible, and it was not. It wasn't.
They freaking lied about it for the sake of it. And this is creates natural beauty, whatever, recreation, etc., but it also supplies, power.
I can tell you that
650,000 people. It's crazy.
This is the year of our Lord 2025. I went by the Huntington Lake Dam that was built roughly around 1912. Shaver Lake about 1915. I've been up a few summers ago to Florence at the same time. The people who did these things, they were masters of construction, they were masters of engineering, they were masters of mathematics. They were like the people who built Santa Sofia in Istanbul or the Theodosian walls in Constantinople. They overbuilt things because it was for a cost to benefit analysis. They were not pressed that way, and labor was cheaper. So when you look at these dams that are 100 years old, yes, they need to have, sometimes they put plastic veneers on them, but they are so overbuilt. And I'm speaking in a house that was built between 1870 and 1902 in various sections. And every time I've had somebody come through this house, they said, oh my God, you have redwood siding, heart redwood with no knots, and then underneath it, you have 1x12 redwood planks, 1x12, rough hewn, and then on the other side, you have sheetrock, and then you've got 4x6's heart redwood foundation. They don't do that anymore. And so what I'm getting is those people didn't have money, but they had labor, and they overbuilt things. So when we see all these young people, these environment, this is going to fall. It's not true. Some of these things are going to last forever because that generation, they need upkeep. Every time I go into a new house, I feel like it's not well built compared to these older ones. I really do.
Tenements of tomorrow. Some of them I call.
Some of the ones in the 50s were not well built. I understand that after the war they had to put up housing. But when you look at some of those homes built in the 20s or the late 19th century, it's amazing. I don't like cast iron pipe, when I go into my house and I see these huge 4-inch things this big made of cast iron, I know that there's lead in the joints and all that, but I've never had a problem with them. I've had problems with plastic pipes separating after a few years, but not cast iron.
Don't go under your house anymore, Victor, okay?
I haven't been there for a year. I feel like I need to go back and acquaint myself with my friends. I find certain things that people left there, screwdrivers, hammers, tape measures.
Spiders, snakes. One last thing on the environmental. The environmentalists are about destruction, again with these dams, deprivation. Let's deprive you of enjoying beauty. And it's really heartwarming, is maybe the wrong word, but it's cool that Trump is taking this on and that conservatism is coming out of decades of being.
It's very strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody like this. When you look at the last Republican president, W., it was more or less a political, foreign policy, tax, deregulate. And the same thing was true of George H.W. Bush and even Reagan. Reagan was more holistic. But this is a counter-revolution, and it's everything. And it has two manifestations. One is we're going to look at the deleterious effects of progressivism. So if that's architecture, we're going to go back to neoclassical if we can. If it's the universities, we're going to address that. And then the second half of it is we're not treating the symptoms. Why do you have an open border? Why do you have high crime rates? Why do you have something like the Afghan pullout? It's because of an ideology. And that ideology politically is called progressive social communism. And it is internally DEI, woke, radical, and we're going to address that. The roots. So we're going to go in and we're going to challenge these silk stocking law firms. We're going to go in and challenge the universities. We're going to go to the root causes that have done such damage. And that's what the left is really angry about, because they're thinking, wow, we know we don't have the people. We can't win on the issues. There's 30 to 70 issues, but we do control the media, the universities, K through 12, foundations, PBS, NPR, USAID, and he's going after our sources of power. This is nuts. How dare he do that? And that's what this is, a counter-revolution that we've never seen before.
It made me think of a B-17 or whatever the B what, because you've got bombs, you got turrets, back, forth, top, bottom, front, you take on your enemies wherever they are, 360 degrees.
That was what was the whole strategy of the United States. They said, we're not just going to lose a lot of Marines fighting in places like Okinawa, Iwo Jima. You got to do that. Our army in the Philippines or the Bulge. We're going to address the sources of what feeds that machine. And that's the Ruhr Valley, that's the oil fields in Romania, that's the Mitsubishi factories in Tokyo, and that's what they did. And we're going to mine the harbors, and it worked.
As you know, you know more than most. Your father was part of that, but so many men gave their lives for that.
B-17s were the worst. The thing about B-29s was tragic because they were such a beautiful plane and they were so ahead of its time that it was very hard to shoot them down if they got up that high. But there was 25,000 individual parts, I think. And over half, about 65% of the lost B-29s were for mechanical failure, because it was crazy to take an experimental plane, make them go 1,600 miles. That's longer than the range of a modern jet fighter. 1,600 miles, and then 1,600 miles back with no computer navigation. And then all these different parts and these new ideas about, remote turret targeting and compression, and it was something. It was very experimental, and that a lot of people died. 40,000 died in B-24s and B-17.
Victor, we've talked so many times. You've talked about your father and his service, and we've talked about 12 O'Clock High's movie. I'm just wondering, when I flew back from Fresno, when I saw you, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago, I watched that. I think it was Masters of the Sky.
Mm-hmm.
Have you? I saw two
Masters
episodes.
of the Air, maybe. Yeah.
Did you see that series?
I just saw some of it.
Okay.
I want to see it.
Okay, just curious.
I saw a fascinating, though, off topic. I just watched a 1995 interview between Ben Johnson and Harry Carey Jr. Yeah,
really?
An hour long, and they were talking about Harry Carey was banned from Westerns by Howard Hawks for 10 years because he just called him Howard. instead of Mr. Hawks. And John Ford threw a rock at him once right at his head. It had great stories. Ben Johnson, I just loved that guy. He was American original.
Yeah, well, yesterday I was just watching the scene from Rio Grande where Harry Carey Jr. and Ben Johnson ride the horses Roman style with two horses standing.
He was the only actor in history to be the national rodeo champion and also an Academy Award winner. Didn't he win Academy Award for the last picture show, I think? Supporting actor. I really liked him. Good thing about him, I always like, when I like people, I like to see that they ended up well. He was a master real estate investor. He ended up worth about $100 million in LA real estate. Anyway, that was off topic.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just went a little blank there a second. You're to forgive me if I. Okay, Victor, what do we want to talk about? You know what? I do want to get your opinion on a couple of higher ed things, but not unimportant. The big beautiful bill expanded school choice. I think this is one of the more dramatic things that is happening. You talk about taking on all these important issues and freeing up philanthropic dollars and from businesses, like dollar for dollar. To bankroll educational choice. This is a big thing. It's big for Catholic schools, but it's big for all kind of private education. And it's truly big for parents that their kids will have many more kids will have affordable options. Anyway, Victor, any thoughts on this component of the big beautiful bill?
Yeah, one just general. There's so many things in there that's what the left's is angry about, that it's supposed to be mostly a budget bill, and there's so many things from the wall to remittance taxes to extension of the tax cuts to dealing with the universities and the public schools. All of us went to public schools, and I insisted my children all go to public schools, even though they were kind of wild by the time they were of age. But the public schools are not the public schools anymore, so all of these, I think most people believe now that private schools do a better job, especially in blue cities. It's when you have the teachers unions and you are using the public schools to indoctrinate people, and why is that happening? Because they're all trained at these schools of education, and they certify people. You can be a math whiz. You can be a genius in Phi Beta Kappa in math. You can get a master's degree from Harvard in math, and you can't teach math in a California school unless you're credentialed. And if you go through those credentialing programs, they're not like they were 50 years ago. They're things like, what color is this person? What's his sexual orientation? What's the new Green Deal? That's what they're doing. And that comes as, again, it's an act of commission, but it's an act of omission. They don't know anything, these teachers. Just think of a public schools with millions of Randy Weingarten.
Oh, my God. She's
So anything to help.
Yep. It's called the Educational Choice for Children Act, ECCA. This was a big deal for conservatives for years, and the fact that it's in this bill is wonderful. One more topic before we head for the break, Victor, and this is a total disconnect from what we were just talking about, but America 250 we're coming up. By the way, the day we're recording is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of the Causes and Necessities of Taking Up Arms. So it's kind of the pre-declaration of independence a year ahead of time.
That was 2 years before, wasn't it? By
1 year.
Lee.
Yeah.
It was at the Lee Memorandum.
Well, that might have been even a year before this, but
first cousin. It was Lighthorse Harry Lee's first cousin, and he passed something in Virginia 2 years before 1776 in the Second Continental Congress about these are the reasons. We're going to disassociate ourselves from Britain, and then Jefferson and Adams gave all of those reasons, in the Declaration why. Which remember Andrew Roberts was that in his Life of King George? Andrew's a wonderful historian, but he wrote an article about how all the founders, was it 17 reasons? I can't remember the number. Our educated listeners know better than I do, but he went through each one saying, this is a lie, this is bogus, this is wrong.
What a jingoist he is.
Yeah.
Give him his due.
These people,
Yeah, there's so many important, let's call them political science things happening, precursor to next July 4th, and we're now 362 days out. But so this gets me, though. I was a big bicentennial kid. I just was.
I remember the ship. Remember the ships on the harbor?
The tall ships. Yeah, it was wonderful.
I don't think we'll ever be able to. Trump thinks, I don't know. I don't think we'll ever be able to do that again.
No, especially after that Mexican ship crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge a couple of weeks back. But Donald Trump wants to have a UFC fight on the White House property as part of America 250. And I'm sorry. I just think that is just like...
I don't understand when I read that. Does he want to make a temporary stadium on the White House ground?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it's temporary.
I don't know if he's doing that to troll people. It's like Greenland, right? I don't think he's going to invade Greenland. He wants a base there. He wants Denmark to spend more money, but he doesn't want to go invade Greenland. But maybe he wants to have such a match there, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, I hope not. I personally draw the line at that. Anyway, Victor, we've got some great troubling higher ed stories to get your take on, and we'll get that when we come back from these final important messages. The dollar reset that currency experts have warned about for decades just shifted into overdrive, and the warning signs are impossible to ignore. Central banks are hoarding gold at unprecedented rates. This isn't temporary market volatility. History shows that when global powers coordinate to replace a reserve currency, a massive reset inevitably follows. Gold isn't overpriced at record highs. It's the dollar that's rapidly losing its 80-year global dominance. Meanwhile, central banks have purchased over 1,000 tons of gold annually for 3 consecutive years. This isn't just economic policy. It could be the early stages of complete monetary restructuring. And that's why American Alternative Assets created the Dollar Reset Survival Kit that shows you exactly how to position your retirement savings before this historic transition accelerates, and potentially receive up to $10,000 in free silver to jumpstart your protection strategy. Call 833-2-USA-GOLD or visit VictorLovesGold.com today. That's 833-287-2465 or VictorLovesGold.com. Protect your wealth before it's too late. We are back with the Victor Davis Hanson Show. Victor, gosh, here's, I can't believe this. This is from the College Fix. I think both articles might be from the College Fix, so this has to do with medical school. Top medical schools teach, quote, weight inclusivity, end quote, racial justice. This is a report. Top medical schools are enforcing beliefs such as weight inclusivity, racial justice, and gender ideology on their staff and students through policies, forced statements, and curricular mandates, a recent Speech First report found. This is a report's called Critical Condition. I'll just get to the end, the last short sentence of this. Students also are instructed to avoid terms such as overweight or obese. Okay, look, I don't want to make fun of fat people, but it's ridiculous that this is...
It's a health issue, though.
Yeah.
I could see the argument if they were arguing that obesity has no health ramifications, but it does. And it doesn't just affect the individual, it affects society at all. It's a huge medical overhead. But again, I don't want to keep pounding that. It's a sin of omission. Why wouldn't the new medical schools say things like this? We've had a recent uptake in things like tuberculosis, measles, and, chlamydia. You read about that. Why don't they have a course that says resurgence of new epidemics? And here we're going to teach all of our young residents how to spot a tubercular patient, what to do about a patient that has measles, things like that. Why don't they do that? That would save so many more lives. Or why don't they say things like this? Let's get another double-blind study about all of these new weight loss semi-gluten medicines and see to which degree that they, when you read about all these weight reduction shots, you get 2 different views. One day you read and says, oh my gosh, it causes this type of cancer or this type of... The next day you say, oh no, man, this latest study says it helps lower blood sugar, it helps do this, it helps do all that, lowers cholesterol. So we don't have any definitive answers. Why don't they just stick to what they do? You know what's happening in the medical schools and law schools? It's like a guy you hired to put a roof on your home, and he comes down and he says, before I put a roof on your home, I got to know the racial composition of your household and how many gay people are here. because I have to adjust my schedule or my type. That's the kind of stuff it is. No, you're supposed to put a roof on the house. I guess what I'm trying to say is when you read about that, it's not just the course is there, it's the people who were admitted and hired to teach the course. So when you have that agenda, then you look at people who are doctors or applying to be professors of medicine, and you pick people like that. And then when you have your huge pool and you have 100 people for every slot, you pick people like that. And it's not based on merit. And people are going to die because of this.
That's, I didn't read this.
As the left says about everything.
The University of Texas at Austin, they have the Dell Medical School, and it offers what they call a Developing Outstanding Clinical Skills program that teaches students to embrace, quote, weight inclusivity, arguing that weight loss strategies foster a culture of shame. So, yeah, it's all very food ideological. I wonder what Michael Dell thinks about that. I assume the school's named after him. So, Victor, another higher ed story comes out of, where does it come out of? UPenn, which you and Sammy were talking about that on the last podcast, some of the concessions that University of Pennsylvania has made to the Trump administration over Leah Thomas and men masquerading as women in sports, a host of things. But here's UPenn class to explore violence, quote unquote, threatening the future of black food culture. This is again a college fix story, and it says a critical writing seminar offered in the fall, this coming fall, at the University of Pennsylvania will study how racism affects, quote, contemporary food justice movements, quote, and, quote, the unjust challenges it creates for black food. I won't read more, Victor, but to me, I mean, this seems, A, it's lunacy, and B, not even the racial stuff, it's a contrivance.
Yeah, it is. It works like this. I'm a graduate student getting a PhD. I'm a recently minted PhD and I need a job, or I'm an assistant professor that needs tenure and I got to get into the diversity, equity, inclusion, race fixation, and it's been crowded the last 30 years. There's thousands of papers and worthless books, and I got to get something. Hey, somebody hasn't done something about food like this. Hey, somebody hasn't done something about insects, racist insects. Somebody hasn't done something about racist dog houses. Whatever it is, I got to find a new object. It's like the commissariat, in the 30s, 40s, 50s in the Soviet Union. You've got to find a new target, a class enemy. You've got a class bourgeoisie sellout trend. I remember when the Soviet Union was going after us for having the hula hoop craze, and this was a bourgeoisie obsession and distraction from class struggle and all this stuff. These people they're funny, but they're also dangerous when they turn on people. There's a good story in Free Press by their investigative reporter about a young man who was at Los Altos, a Los Altos very prestigious school. He lived in Los Altos, and I won't mention the school. It was parochial. And he and his friends put a green mask, for, some of those acne medicines, you put it on, like put a mask on and you leave it, and they thought it was funny, so they took pictures of their green mask. And somebody said, of course, this was not green face, but black face. They knew it was green, but they said that this was a way of doing. And they expelled him from the school. And the reason it was in that he had sued and he lost the defamation, but it's all about how people in Los Altos ruined his life. They had to move. They moved out. There were people on social media, the school, and there was one common theme. It was all cowardice. We were just looking for one brave man or woman who said, this is not going to stand at my school. One brave principal, one brave teacher that said, we are not going to expel some 17-year-old kid who thinks it's funny to put an acne green mask on the internet. Or somebody put it on, or he did, and we're not going to go railroad him and destroy his life. And that's what they did. It took them 4 years. They received $1 million compensation, but that wasn't enough for what they did to them. But this stuff is not supportable by logic or reason. It's only by fear. And when people stand up to it, they're terrified. Academics are terrified. It's just amazing.
Well, let me get two quick last minute things here, Victor, as we close out the show. One is I had forgot to mention a few weeks back, and we were just talking about environmental stuff, that Donald Trump he's issued a lot of executive orders. This one was in mid-June. It was empowering common sense wildfire prevention and response. And boy, oh boy, it was about time that somebody with common sense did this, and you know this better than anyone. You mentioned your house up in the mountains. That almost was burned down a couple of years back. Half the damn state seems to have burned down. But any thoughts on Trump's action here?
In some ways, the second Trump term is a referendum, not just on the disaster of Joe Biden, but on the naivete of the first administration, what they were getting into. And they use this term common sense now. And I think that's called the soft spot, really. What they're thinking about is, where are most people? Because most people are not in the university, they're not broadcasters, they're not politicians, they're not bureaucrats. And they have a common sense that is right on most issues, and we're going to try to find what that is, and we're going to reflect that. And one of the things we're going to do is stop environmentalism destroying people's lives, stop DEI destroying people's lives, stop open borders destroying people's lives. So it's part of this. It's humanitarian, if you think about it. It's what benefits most of the people. And that's why it appeals. That's why he won almost half the Hispanic vote. Because he did win half. Because he thought if you were a Mexican-American guy and you were in a Latino community and all of a sudden they dumped 5 busloads of people from Guatemala or Chiapas in your neighborhood, and there were gang members. You had no idea who they did. You have no idea their health. You had no idea their gang affiliations. They had no money. They had no skills. They needed parity, so they were in all of your social services, from dialysis to the ER room. And the people who did it were not members of your community. They were people like Jill Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas. So it's a humanitarian effort to just go back and try to address what most people.
Yeah. What an utter frustration as a citizen to think, how is this madness happening in the face of common sense? Like, who's going to stand up for common sense? And finally, it's happening.
It's a very amoral time we're living in, because you'll read things like a story. It'll say, 10 people shot tonight in Chicago, or 100 people fog-bound motor accident. 100 cars pile up in the winter, dead. And it's a fleeting thing. And then we'll see a story that says, so-and-so suing for $30 million because he yelled and they took him off the airplane, or someone went to McDonald's and the coffee was too hot, or someone said that guy put a green mask on acne and that means he's racist against me, or a little girl was making nooses, just trying to see how you make a noose, and all of a sudden I walked by and saw it. We obsess over the trivial, and then we don't care about the catastrophic. Maybe that's why we do it. I don't know. But it's a really sick society that people are dying on highways and substandard infrastructure and all sorts of things, and we just kind of shrug. They're dead. And then we'll get some person who says he's a victim or she's a victim, and we're supposed to empathize, And I don't know. It's a callousness in the whole society. It is.
You mentioned the coffee, the McDonald's coffee, the historic case. We had a National Review cruise. This is before you were coming on. We were going from Warnemünde port in Germany to Berlin, and we reserved this train. It was like 400 people, and it had food and it had alcohol drinks, but the Germans would not serve coffee because it was a train full of Americans, because they thought someone might spill the coffee and they might sue. It's kind of crazy. But one last thing, Victor. We have a new law banning foreign ownership of Texas land. That goes into effect on September 1st. So this is precluding...
What's the subtext of that? No Chinese associated companies can buy land next to Air Force bases or military facilities.
China, Iran, North Korea, Russia. Prohibitions for real property include agricultural land, industrial property, water rights, rare earth materials, groundwater, timber, oil, and natural gas.
For you 3 or 4 hard leftists that are out there, ask yourself how many American companies are allowed to buy a mine or a timber forest next to a Russian Air Force base, or buy a Chinese rice farm next to a Chinese rocket launcher base. None. Zero. So another thing is symmetry. Symmetry. We're going to treat you like you treat us. That's what Trump is saying. You guys don't allow us to do that, we're not going to allow you to do it. Same thing with you mentioned the environmentalism. One of the aspects, as I understand it, Trump's executive order is he's not going to allow the same price for admittance for U.S. people and foreign nationals. But when you go so many places, it'll say if you're a EU member, you know what I mean, you can get in with your EU card, and if you're not, you pay. And it's the same thing when you land at an airport. EU people, this, and it's a little bit, I mean, we have it too to a certain extent, but they do prejudice things in Europe if you're an EU member. And so Trump is just saying, we're going to do the same thing. Same thing. And yeah, it's an effort to try to teach people that they're unique people and they have some unique attributes as Americans in a unique country, and they should be appreciative of that, and they should be rewarded because they're American citizens. That's what he's trying to teach.
Well, maybe it will restore the sense of patriotism. Now, we're recording 2 days after the 4th of July, and maybe these are just too many anecdotes, but there seem to be there's more of a thread out there on the left of now denigrating the 4th of July. This suppression and hatred of patriotism or anti-patriotism is just becoming more.
Well, those polls are very
overt.
disturbing. 36% of Democrats feel that they're patriotic. And even when Obama was president and even when Biden was president, I think the lowest Republicans got are like 80% said they were patriotic, or 75%. It's the educational system. To be frank, when you have 50 million people who were not born in the United States, 55 million, and you have 16% of the population, and you have no civic education to speak of, what do you expect? Just to finish this, we have a certain, what's the word for it, typeset of immigrant who come from very, very dangerous places, impoverished places, and they come here with the largesse of the United States government and private institutions that give them fellowships. They go to college, and they click in. Either they feel angry that this country works and theirs didn't, or they feel that there are going to be career rewards if they are left and anti-American. But how else do you explain, say, Barack Obama? His father comes from Kenya. He was an alcoholic. He got in, 2 accidents, finally killed himself in an accident. Comes over here on all these large scholarships, and then he's kind of an anti-American, and his son is, you get the apology here. You get Kamala Harris's father comes from a very different place in the Caribbean, and he comes, and next thing you know, he's a Marxist professor at Stanford. You get Mamdani, they're in Uganda, and they're driven out by this illiberal Ugandan racist government that doesn't like the 1% elite running the country, which the mercantile class of the Indian expatriate community. He goes to South Africa, they run him out. He comes to the United States, and suddenly he's given this prestigious berth at, Columbia? And he's an endowed professor. His wife is a multimillionaire making these documentaries that critique American lifestyle. And then we get Mamdani, who says that the United States is basically I could go on with Ilhan Omar and even AOC's. I think father she was born in the United States, but he came from Puerto Rico. So that's what people are worried about when all these people from godforsaken countries come over here, and then the United States welcomes them. JFK had all those programs for scholars. That's what Obama's dad came over. Yeah. Students. And they get all of these beneficia from us. And then they either become very radically anti-American, or their kids become radical. And then when somebody said, why do we do that? And everybody said, you're a nativist, you're a racist, you're a xenophobe. No. Why would you? I guess it's because the left welcomes them in to universities or foundations and then encourage them to be anti-American. I don't know, but we're all waiting for immigrants to come from failed states and say, oh my God, thank you for coming here.
Kiss the ground, yeah. Yeah, not happening. Well, Victor, I'm going to kiss the screen in a minute. Appreciation for all the wisdom you've shared today. Recorded 2 shows. You've been terrific. I want to thank the folks that leave comments, hundreds and hundreds of comments on Victor's website, on YouTube, on Rumble, on Apple. Thanks for taking the time to do that. I try to read most of them. I'm going to read one here in a second. I want to thank the folks that write me about Civil Thoughts, which is the free weekly email newsletter I write for the Center for Civil Society. You can go to civilthoughts.com, sign up. Every Friday, the newsletter provides 14 great articles. Here's a clip, here's a link. Great articles I've come across the previous week. I think you're going to like it. Again, it's free, and we are not selling your name. Trust me, there's no risk. One comment, and I mispronounced, I called you, remember we talked about it a couple of episodes ago, I called you Victor David Hanson.
More people say David than David.
So Dan Norris 8478 writes, "Hey Victor, you should dump your blue blood interviewer and hire me. I guarantee you I will pronounce your name correctly." I didn't know I was blue blood.
I would say, without any exaggeration, that if I'm introduced, 40% of the time they say David.
Yeah, well.
And the reason I never used my name is all of a sudden I came home with my PhD thesis. I was writing it, was 23, and I had it typewritten, and my mother said, "Victor Hanson. We named all three of you boys after these Swedes, and we have Hanson, Hanson, Hanson. And my father had 3 daughters, and the Davis name is dead. And why don't you use your middle name? Your oldest brother was Nels, Swede, Hanson. And you and your twin brother are going to have Davis. So I want you to," I said, "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to put your name on your thesis, Victor Davis Hanson." So that's what I did.
You're a good, obedient son. That's a good thing. The name VDH, it resonates. So anyway.
Well, I've had a lot of flashback because I've had people actually introduce me in university settings, of course. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, V.D. Hanson. As in venereal disease. So that's kind of funny, but not funny. Hey, VD. Anyway, I think you froze, Jack.
I froze. I'm sorry. I don't know. I've got to get a different connection. Well, let's just say thanks, everybody, and we'll see you again next time on the Victor
Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time, and thanks for watching and listening.
God bless.